Alright, Warlock builds. I've been playing a lot of Warlock recently. I'm really strong at Warlock, that's why my Titan builds kind of suck now. But, starting off, let's talk Prismatic. So, I have two different Prismatic builds that do two different things. So, first of all, here's a subclass. Nova Bomb with Star Eaters on the Bond is a very, very high damage super. So we're going with that. We could do like Threadling or Needle Storm if we wanted. Nova Bomb is better, right? Plus, I'm using Nova Bomb for my void damage for my Elemental Honing. So we'll talk Elemental Honing in a bit. Phoenix Dive for survivability. It's going to beat out Healing Rift, right? Burst Glide. I don't usually talk jumps, but Burst Glide is the only good jump on Warlock, so that's the only class I'm going to talk about jumps. Arcane Needle is important for two reasons. It's my strand for my Elemental Honing, and it's 3 melee charges, which is going to help with my Lightning Surge. Lightning Surge is going to be way better in Edge of Fate. Storm Grenade is the highest DPS grenade on Warlock, and it's also going to be my arc damage source. Never use Healing Grenade on Prismatic unless you're using Speaker Sight. Healing Grenade by itself is really fucking bad, so don't even try it. I've also got Feed the Void, which is going to be insane for my survivability. If you don't want to run a melee build for some reason, you could switch out Lightning Surge for Helion. I don't see the purpose when you can get free abilities that are going to be good. So, Protection, Purpose, always a must. Purpose on Void gives you an Overshield, which is super fucking good because your orbs are going to heal you, and they're going to give you an Overshield. As long as you're making orbs, you're going to stay alive. Courage for damage. Hope for class ability, for survivability, and then I don't need Solitude, it's just there, just because. So, weapons for this. Tenacious is my source of strand damage, or stasis damage, so I need that. Lord of Wolves could be switched out for Still Hunt if you want. This build doesn't really care about what distance you're at, so that doesn't matter. You could also switch it out for Aberrant, or fucking, you could do Buried for Devour, all the good survivability weapons that go in this slot, you could switch this out for. And then Hezen, of course, Elemental is only valid on Prismatic, and Bait and Switch is very, very not valid on Prismatic, so we're doing Hezen on this one. I'm choosing to run Star Eater, and I'm also going to run Assassin on this. That's going to make my triple charge Lightning Surge even better for survivability. This build is going to be way better than the Prismatic Hunter in terms of survivability, and it'll just about compete in DPS. When you throw on the Celeste on the Hunter build with a Still Hunt, it's going to destroy this build in damage. But if we're not running Celeste on that build, or if it's a Lord of Wolves encounter instead of a Still Hunt encounter, this build is going to be better. So I've got my Surges just set up for solar damage, and that's it. That's the whole build, right? This is a Tractor Cannon build on Warlock, and this one's getting nerfed because Ignitions are gonna kind of be less effective. But this build is interesting because you could run it on pure solar or prismatic. As you can see, this is a lot of solar stuff on my prismatic. And the reason for that is the Incinerator Snap is going to be the main kind of thing with this build. Phoenix Dive for survivability, Healing Grenade for survivability. This is a direct contradiction of what I just said about healing grenades. This build doesn't need a fucking grenade. And its ad clear will be fine. So you really could get away with it. But I recommend not relying on this, right? Song of Flame lasts 5 seconds shorter than Well. So this build is never going to be good for long DPS encounters. Only burst damage, right? And only when you're close because it's a tractor build. You don't need the Helion here. You could do anything you want. If you wanted to, you could switch this to Arcane Needle and switch this to Lightning Surge and have a melee focus with your shotgun. But because I'm using Apotheosis, I'm planning on using my Incinerator Snaps when my Song of Flame runs out. Now, if you didn't want to run Apotheosis because the damage phase is really that short, of course you could switch to Surge and Arcane Needle and just spam your Song of Flames, melee. Protection and purpose, of course, always. Courage for damage, hope for your fucking Phoenix Dive for survivability, and Solitude just because I have a slot. This threat level is my best shotgun with Trench and Grave, but way better than threat is if you have the um, what is it called? The other shotgun, Perfect Paradox. Perfect Paradox with Trench and its origin trait will be a direct substitute for this weapon, but slightly better. I threw Aberrant on for ad clear and survivability. I like running Demo on my Aberrant. A lot of people like Incandescent. I like Demo. There's plenty of good grenade builds in this game. Tractor, of course, and then the mods are set up to be focused on shotgun DPS. Um, Here's where it kind of gets complicated. The solar builds on Warlock could be done in so many different combinations, but you've essentially got like the big three exotics on Warlock, and you've got to choose whether you want to do close range damage or far range damage. So for exotics, you're either going to be running Speaker Sight, and you can run Speaker Sight during ad clear or during damage, depending on how dangerous those two are. Usually in contest, it's going to be safe enough in ad clear where you can switch to Cenotaph during ad clear and do Speaker Sight during the well. And that's how you keep your teammates alive in well, because well doesn't really do a good job at keeping people alive in contest. So usually, Cenotaph for ads, Speaker Sight for DPS. If it's that safe in DPS, you could run Sanguine. So these two builds are even though they're using two different exotic armors, these are my examples for like short range and long range DPS. So this is a standard well build, but because I'm using short range DPS, and that's going to be Lord of Wolves, Ashes and Searing are going to be for your Lord of Wolves. This one's going to do better DPS. This one's just in case you need to kill an ad with your fucking Lord of Wolves, and it gives extra recovery, which is not going to be good in Edge of Fate, but you know. So the mods for this are obviously solar damage based, and I have a commemoration with Subsistence Unrelenting, which is extremely underrated. And the exact way this build is set up right now is going to be able to keep you alive in any contest. You will focus using this Phoenix Dive to heal yourself. You're going to also use the Healing Grenade to heal yourself, but you need to rely on the Speaker Sight and the Seekers to heal your teammates. You can also heal yourself with Commemoration. That's going to be way more effective than using whatever fragment this is that gives you Solar Weapon or ability Final Blows, grant you Restoration. So you could technically keep your Restoration up with Healing Grenade and Empyrean, which is a good build. But you don't need to do either of those if you just put Unrelenting on your Commemoration. So this build is really, really good for short range DPS. Also, if you manage to do short range DPS, you have the heavy slot available. This is a S plus tier build. This is the variation for long range damage. You just throw on something with long range and you take off Searing. So as you can see, I ran Empyrean here, and that's just in case I need to throw my Healing Grenade at my feet and then continue it up with Aberrant to keep the Restoration going. Again, you don't need to run Sanguine with this. You could run Speaker Sight if it's that dangerous. You could also throw on Cenotaph for this. I also want to say that you should keep a slot open near your solar builds. so that you can switch between whatever your combo is. I don't care if the combo is Speakers and Xeno or Sanguine and Speakers or whatever. Also, if you're using Xeno, that's going to be your #1 exotic to use if you're running Divinity. Sanguine does boost your damage no matter what subclass you're on and no matter what damage you're doing by 10% as long as you're in a Rift. So if you're well bitch and you're using Divinity, Sanguine is your pick for damage, but the Xeno is going to be way better utility because it's going to improve your trace rifle as you're firing, the same way that Actium War Rig reloads auto rifles. So you're going to want to run Xeno if you're using Div, which means that if you're using Xeno already during DPS and it's safe enough to where you don't have to run Speakers, you could run a Cenotaph build with Div here. You could use the Sunder Doctrine trace rifle here. And so you're going to use the Div for damage, of course. I should have saved this build to show it, but whatever. Div for damage, you can use any trace rifle here to proc the ammo generation, and then you can use a machine gun here. Probably going to be this one if you're in contest. This can be your ad clear. So I should have saved that build to show it off, but whatever. Too late now. Void build is going to abuse Verities, right? So here's the standard Verities build. You want basically feed the Void Chaos Accelerant, right? These fragments are going to help my grenade do way better damage. So I've got Weaken, I've got Increased Duration, I get Volatile for free on a grenade kill, and then this is going to increase my Devour duration because this is the only class where you don't need to run Starvation to get Devour easily. That is, you know. Of course, Feed the Void is going to be your lifeblood because it increases the heal amount that you get on Devour as well. Not only does it give you Devour, it heals you for even more. So this build is basically just, I'm going to charge my grenade and throw it because Verities is going to make my grenade way more damage. And the way that I get Verities stacked up is by getting subclass matching kills. So Void right here. I'm not running Subsistence on this one because I have Devour already. And then this glaive is just an example of something that you could run. This is a very unique glaive. Demo gives you extra grenade energy when you get kills, but it gives even more grenade energy when you're on a glaive, a sniper, or fusion. So out of those three, you know, or end shotguns too. So out of those four, shotguns and glaives are really the only valid ones for ad clear when it comes to the void element. You could run Glaciocasm with like Reservoir and Unrelenting, or not Unrelenting, sorry, Subsistence, but not many people have a Glaciocasm with that role. So demo on this one is going to be good. Also, just having a shield from your glaive is going to be very, very useful. And because it's a glaive, you can throw your grenade while it's equipped. You can't do your fucking melee when you have your glaive out, but you can still throw your grenade. So this is still a valid weapon to use with Verities. And then I have basically just grenade and void damage on the armor mods. So this build is actually usable in contest, especially if you're good at glaives. If you're good at glaives, you can use this. Here is the standard like Delicate Tomb Chaos Reach build. So it's basically just how many Ionic traces can I get? Can I get more Ionic traces? Don't forget to throw your grenade because jolted targets is going to give you Ionic traces, right? So if I had the catalyst for this, it'd be even better. It's one of the things I'm missing for this build. But basically, the more Ionic traces I get, the faster my supercharges. The faster my supercharges, Chaos Reach lasts for like 15-20 seconds if you're holding it on a single target. And it's a lot of total damage. So I've got some grenade and some arc damage right here, just because, you know, Delicate Tomb is good. If you really wanted, you could throw on the perks that give you special ammo. If you want to guarantee that you have special ammo for your Delicate Tomb, I didn't bother. I just decided to say fuck it. I've got Song of Iryu to abuse beacons, and then just scatter just because it's good and it's here. You could use anything you want here. This is my GM build on Warlock. I don't have a normal build. I don't have a normal stasis build because if you just switch the weapons around, you actually could run this in add clear, although I would rather run my void build in add clear. So this is set up to basically make my cold snap the best it can be and to keep me as live as much as possible. So Ozymancies on cold snap. You could run this build on prismatic. I'd recommend not because you have ice flare bolts is stasis only, and ice flare bolts is very important. You could run any weapons you want on this. If you want to run something with demo, kind of like the void build, you could. You could use Chain of Command on this build instead of Retrofit if you care about grenade energy. But if you know how to use Ozymancies and you're not shit, you'll never need grenade energy, which is why I just threw these on for champions. And then of course the armor mods are just, I didn't even change them away from, like, it's just for Tanisha, which is a thing. But the grenades are important. You could really change your surges and any weapons to anything you want. And Strand, this loadout is actually really, really good. Really underrated in DPS. So you've got a couple, before I do the subclass, you've got a couple options for DPS weapons, right? This was what makes this build so versatile. This build will survive nerfs and sandbox changes because you've got Euphony is the highest DPS in your kinetic slot for this build, but you could change to Scatter. Scatter does way less damage. Euphony is definitely the choice. Also, Euphony is better for long range and for precision. And then down here, you've got Cataphract, which is going to be way higher DPS, but you could run your Scintillation here if you have a Scintillation. So you have 4 valid weapons in here, although Cataphract is going to be better than Euphony. If you really wanted to, you could take the hit on not running Euphony and run Scatter so you can free an exotic slot here. Then at that point, you could throw in like another DPS weapon like Still Hunt or Lord, or you could throw a survivability weapon in here. Even though I have Aberrant Action just saved here as a placeholder, you could run Red Death if you take Scatter instead of Euphony, and then Red Death with this build is very, very valid because you don't get a lot of healing on Broodweaver. So I've got very basic Broodweaver build for DPS, except we're using Sanguine, so we have to make sure to use our Rift during DPS. We have to make sure we use our Rift. Throwing your Arcane Needle to unravel the target is going to help you with some DPS. I would recommend not doing this if it's a short damage phase, you know. And then these fragments and aspects are just for DPS. So Sanguine, strand damage. I didn't fucking save any strand like surges or anything to this build because Sanguine is going to handle that. Sanguine on strand with strand weapons is going to give us surges, so you don't need to run surges. I've got a solar weapon surge on this bitch, and because my survivability is so low, I'm just running solar loaders for this. You could run strand loaders, it doesn't matter. So that's all the builds. And let's see how they do against normal mode. Keitel. So no modifiers, no daybreak, no surges. This is just build. So Tanisha's is Tanisha's, and then oh, that's fun. Just gonna forget that happened. So if I go in with my melee and be a little bit more aggressive this time, this build is gonna make me invis. And if you can find a way to get your melee charge back really fast, then that's gonna be good because we need our melee for damage anyways. So basically, even though you can proc arc damage on your melee, if you do lightning surge, I'm gonna use my grenade from my arc damage source. That's gonna help my elemental honing. So for elemental honing, I'm gonna do grenade. I'm gonna throw my melee. I need to hit a tenacious shot as well. And then I'm going to do solar damage. As you can see, I've got ×3. And then solar damage, now I have ×4. So it's going to be ×5 if I throw my Nova. Of course, this isn't really the situation in which you'd be able to stack Elemental easily, because it's just ad clear. But if you're standing still in a Well of Radiance, and you had to do like Warlock DPS, it'd just be like Nova Bomb, Melee Grenade, and then Tenishas, and then your solar weapons. And that's basically the rotation. Alright, now this build, like I said, is going to be way better on Perfect Paradox, but I'll take what I can get, you know, haven't really done the story mode yet. So this build in your ad clear is going to be basically just Aberrant, you know, heal clip. I can panic dive, or I can panic grenade, you know. Helion actually does proc some cure. If I use it, I think it's cure and not restoration, which is cool. And then in DPS, if I had a target to DPS, I would, you know, I would tractor, pop well, and then you could do snap 1, 2, 3 for trench barrels, snap 1, 2, 3, snap 1, 2, 3, snap 1, 2, 3. And the only reason I had to reload my shotgun there is because my snap didn't actually hit anything. If you're standing in front of something, your snap would be hitting trench barrel, or I'm sorry, grave robber, or if it was perfect paradox, it'd be doing the origin trait. So this build is a very brain dead easy tractor build that you just spam shotgun and incinerator snap. I'm not going to show the well builds. It's a well. You put down well, but this version of it with all the survivability is very strong. So you cannot die if you're in contest with this build. The Void build is basically going to be a question of how fast can I get Void kills to proc my Verities, and then what do I want to kill with my grenade, because my grenade's in a fucking one-shot, basically up to champions. You know, I have Death Throws ×5 right now, and now I charge it, and it just fucking destroys everything that walks in it. They don't even last for a second, because it's normal mode. If they are in contest, they wouldn't even last a second. It's only going to be really champions. And as you can see, my Death Throws is still like at max stacks. You don't actually need to get that many kills for Death Throws, but the faster you get kills, the better it's going to be for grenade regeneration if you have demo. I don't have demo on this machine gun. You can run commemoration. I'm sorry, not commemoration. You can run collective measure if you want demo on a machine gun. I just didn't. I couldn't be fucked to go craft it. But this glaive does have demo, and it's going to basically mean that I'm not gonna fucking die. As long as I decide to get kills, I can still proc my Death Throws. When you're charging your grenade, you get insane damage resistance, and then I can go back to holding my shield. You know, if you're good at glaives, unlike me, you could really go hard with this build. And then, because this thing has demo, it reloads when you throw your grenade. So, instead of dealing with the bulky glaive reload, you could just reload with your grenade. This Ionic Trace build, everyone's seen this 1,000 times. But the reason why you want Catalyst on this weapon is because it reloads your gun when you get arc trace, or, you know, Ionic Traces. But essentially, you know, spamming everything I can. Now, if I didn't have my super, this would be getting my super back really fast. So if I spend my super right now, I come down here and start trying to get kills without dying, of course, because there's not a lot of survivability on this. I can do a pretty good job at getting my super back. If this was more dense, this would be way better. But as you can see, every time I get a kill with this thing, it is a chunk. So it's still valid. This build still works. And Delicate Tomb actually isn't garbage, which is funny. So yeah, super gen build on this. And then Stasis. Jesus Christ. Alright, so weapons don't matter in this build because this build is just going to be a big grenade fest. So he gets a grenade. He gets a grenade. You never want to shatter or shoot your target that you throw your cold snap at until the cold snap starts leaving the first target. So for example, I have not been doing a very good job of it right now. But when I find the next guy, I'll show this as so great. Let's find two close together. Alright, so this guy, right? Throw my grenade at him, and if you can see, it takes like 1.5 seconds for the Seeker to actually start leaving him. So if you were to kill him before the Seeker leaves, it would be really bad for your grenade regen. So if I like just slaughter this guy, thankfully my aspect lets Seekers still leave, but it's going to be less Seekers and it's going to be less effective than if you just let the grenade do its work and then start killing them. So this is kind of a passive build, you know, but it's still strong in ad clear. And then I'm not going to show the strand build. You put your rift down, you use your super, and you shoot your weapons. It's a strand build. The only ad clear on it is aberrant action. So it's just aberrant action for ad clear. There's nothing else you can really do. It's not a very survivable build, so you have to use that when you're guaranteed that your teammates are going to be able to handle ad clear for you and keep you safe. This is not really like a contest build that you'd want to run in contest dungeon. This is more like contest raid. But I'd prefer to use this build if I was in contest raid instead, just because it hits a little bit higher ability damage. This one is going to get you a little bit more weapon damage. As like time goes on, this is going to be a little bit more total damage. But this is such higher DPS. It doesn't matter if you run Still Hunt or Lord. This is going to be way better for DPS. So this is definitely